this team we're about to talk about, I wish I could sit here and predict that they can be the team to challenge the Chiefs, because I think on paper the Chargers have a chance. I think they have the quarterback and they have top to bottom a roster that can, but I just don't trust the coaching. And I think a lot of the Chargers' success is dependent on Brandon Staley, and Brandon Staley has given me some confidence because last year the defense did improve from the secondary standpoint. They're still one of the worst rush defenses in the league, but I just can't fully buy into the Chargers. I think their floor is still high because they have Herbert at quarterback and they just got Kellen Moore, and anything that's not Joe Lombardi's an upgrade, but I still can't trust the Chargers. And I think 2023 is a make or break year for Staley, and this is a year where there's a possibility that he gets fired. The fact that he kept his job after blowing a 27-0 lead,
pretty remarkable. Perfect word.
It speaks volumes to how Tom Telesco and the Chargers feel about Brandon Staley as a person. They're going to give him this one last year, but I think this is the last year to prove himself.
Yeah, this past season, they had a top 10 offense. Of course, as you already credited to, Justin Herbert's one of the best in the game. You have Patrick Mahomes, and I consistently say my number 2 quarterback in the National Football League, against popular opinion, is Justin Herbert. And really, we saw Keenan Allen go down. We saw Mike Williams go down. We saw Justin Herbert turn Joshua Palmer into his wide receiver 1 and actually be more than serviceable and continue to get wins. Austin Eckler, we can't talk about it like Austin Eckler hasn't been one of the more reliable these last couple of seasons. I say it also, last 2 seasons, has a combined 40 touchdowns. This guy, Austin Eckler, just has a nose for the end zone. Offensive line last year was not that great, and that's really also due in part to injuries. Rashawn Slater being out this season, that's something to look forward to, his return. The offensive line should be a little bit more improved than it was from last season. Rashawn Slater makes a drastic difference, and that's an obvious statement. It's just more so being hopeful that guys like Keenan Allen can stay healthy. Mike Williams, of course, can stay healthy. Now you add Quinn Johnston to that mix, also allows a little bit more depth, maybe a little bit more wiggle room. God forbid one of these two do go down. You do have a safety blanket. Joshua Palmer, like I already just alluded to, that's another great option to have as a backup option. But defensively, that's really where all your questions really should stem from. The interior of their defensive line, still not great. Secondary-wise, so long as Derwin James, it's just night and day, the difference between the Chargers defense when Derwin James is on the field as opposed to not. Derwin James, when healthy, in my opinion, is the best safety in football. And I say that as being a Broncos fan. I love and adore Justin Simmons. It's just understanding just how versatile this guy Derwin James is. But J.C. Jackson did miss a good portion of last season. In his games that he did play, he was not that great. But, of course, anytime you get someone of his talent, regardless of what your opinion is, you're adding just more talent. Of course, you just hope that he is 100% on return. But really, why I do worry about this team is the rush defense. You didn't do anything to improve it. And I think, back-to-back years, they've been a bottom 5 rush defensive team. Secondary-wise, they can improve. But last year, they were still a bottom 12 defense overall. And it's going to be a lot on Brandon Staley to improve that side of the ball because his job is on the line. If that's the question, 100%. This is a prove-it year. You need to win a playoff game, especially when your quarterback is as great as Justin Herbert is. He had a 27-0 lead. Yeah, we could put some blame on the offense not being able to completely put it away, but to blow a 27-point lead, you got to look at the defense and say, what's going on here?
For sure. Sorry.
Four interceptions in the first half. They did a great job for sure, but second half, it's a tale of two halves, and they could not stop a nosebleed.
No, I was shocked when Brandon Staley kept his job. I thought after he, had that insane meltdown, I thought Sean Payton was going to be the guy they went out and hired, right? You have Justin Herbert there. You have an offense really waiting to explode, and for years, Joe Lombardi's just been holding back this offense, so I thought they were going to let go of Staley. Obviously, they brought him back, and listen, last year, I know it's a disappointment, right? You have the huge lead in the playoffs. You were a team that a lot of people were kind of had as a dark horse, right? Possible Super Bowl if things go right. But unfortunately, a lot of their team dealt with injuries, and it feels like that's always the case with the Chargers, but you had Justin Herbert dealing with the ribs, Keenan with the hamstring, Bosa missed 10-plus weeks, Rashawn Slater missed the year, Mike Williams missed 5 weeks, J.C. Jackson, like you mentioned, missed more than half the year, Derwin James had injuries too, so even with all of those injuries, the fact that they won 10 games, second in the division, you have to take a bit of a victory lap for that, right? You're hoping that this upcoming season you stay healthier, you hope that your franchise quarterback's able to stay upright, your left tackle is one of the best in the game, able to stay upright, and your best defensive players could stay healthy. Now, obviously, you could look at all the teams around the league. The Broncos dealt with a ton of injuries too, but it does feel like this team is talented enough to make a push for the AFC Championship game. I don't know if I go as far to say that they'll be able to go to the Super Bowl, get past the teams like the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Bills, but I think the minimum for this team, their expectations should be at least a playoff win, right? You have Justin Herbert, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and I'm very high on Kellen Moore. I think outside of Sean Payton going to Denver, this is going to be the biggest coaching upgrade across the NFL because, listen, Joe Lombardi, what he did with Justin Herbert these last few years, he should be incarcerated for. I mean, the fact that Justin Herbert is one of the best arms in the NFL, one of the best arms we've ever seen. That's not an exaggeration. His arm is right up there with the Mahomes, is right up there with the Josh Allens. He just doesn't get to show it off as much. These last 2 years, this past season, he was 31st in air yards per attempt at 6.4. The only players below him were Daniel Jones at 6.4 and Matt Ryan. These are two guys that did not throw the ball down the field at all.
The only thing to defend Lombardi and Herbert at the same time is
injuries.
Personnel.
I agree, but you still have NFL receivers that, listen, 31st in the league, there's not 30 teams above him that, you know what I mean, no matter what the personnel is. The 2 years prior, Herbert ranked 18th and 25 in air yards. On the other hand, Kellen Moore with Dak, top 10 air yards per attempt at 8.4 in 2023. He was around top 15 in 2022. 2019 was his highest at 9.3 air yards per attempt. I'm really high on Kellen Moore unlocking this offense, not only because you have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams who could do some things over the middle of the field for Keenan, more possession, and Mike Williams on the outside, but like I mentioned in the Mojo segment, I think Quentin Johnson is someone that could kind of take this offense over the top. They've desperately needed somebody that can make something happen after the catch. Keenan Allen, he's still great, but he's the possession receiver. You're not expecting him to go out there, catch the ball, make 2 or 3 guys miss, and get those chunk plays. He could do it, but he's doing that based off his route running basically alone, right? He's not a burner. He's not that type of guy. And Mike Williams, on the other hand, he is more of a burner in a sense that he's getting vertical. He's the one winning those contested catches. But after the catch, he's not a guy you're expecting to really do much with the ball in his hands. Quentin Johnson is someone that could win down the field, win those contested catches, but also do something with the ball in his hands. That's something they've desperately been missing in this offense. And the fact that Herbert's going to have someone like this skill set, when he's rolling out of the pocket, when he's able to make guys miss and, have those scramble drills, I think Quentin Johnson's someone who's going to benefit greatly from it. So I'm really high on the Kellen Moore upgrade over Joe Lombardi. I think he's going to come in and the Chargers offense is going to look a lot different than it has in the past. And just talk about the defense quickly. We know the talent's there, right? On the edge, you have Khalil Mack and Bosa. That's one of the best, if not one of the best duo in the league. The interior is a bit weak. They still had a terrible rushing defense in the league last year, but they did bring in Eric Kendricks at linebacker. His MO is to stop the run. He's not as much of a coverage guy, more so of a run stopper. And of course, you have Derwin James there. And lastly, at corner, Michael Davis very quietly had a great season, ranked 23rd in coverage per PFF. He's a big corner, 6'2", 200 pounds, plays a lot of press. So if you have him, and if you could get J.C. Jackson to be back at that level he was in New England the year prior, your secondary is shaping up really nice. You just got to hope that defense goes from bottom of the barrel in terms of rush defense to hopefully middle of the pack. Then you could look at a defense that could be top 10 in the league.
And the J.C. Jackson one, him being bad last year was the biggest surprise of the season for me because how Brandon Staley likes to play his corners, he likes to play his corners on an island, playing one-on-one. And that's what J.C. Jackson did in New England. But for some reason, it was a disaster with the Chargers. The run defense will always be a bit leaky because Brandon Staley's philosophy is that I'd rather a 5-6 yard run game than a 10-yard completion. So he doesn't pack the box. Their boxes are very light in the front. The biggest thing with them, man, on defense is just the injuries. Joey Bosa last year played 5 games. Yep. J.C. Jackson played 5 games. Austin Johnson, who was a defensive tackle they signed to pair up with Sebastian Joseph Day, played 8 games. He missed half the season. And then on offense, they lost Rashawn Slater after 3 games. The injury bug has hit the Chargers. That's not even mentioning Mike Williams and Keenan Allen missing a combined 11 games. They were only on the field for a combined 22.6% of the team's dropbacks together. That's why, for me, when it comes to talking about the Chargers and Justin Herbert, he just got his contract extension, and people think for some reason he's regressing. They don't think that he's deserving of being the highest paid quarterback.
It's idiotic opinion.
When people think that Justin Herbert has a plethora of talent surrounding him, it is very obvious to me that they are simply reading names off a website, and they're not actually watching what's happening on the field, because Keenan Allen is good, but he wins in a very particular way that doesn't really spread the offense and threaten defenses vertically. Mike Williams is a jump ball receiver who gets little to no separation. They're still good receivers, but the biggest problem with the team last year was the scheme. And I don't want to give Joe Lombardi a cop-out because it wasn't a personnel issue. Yes, there were some things he had to overcome, but good play callers overcome those obstacles. Keenan got injured in week 2. From weeks 2 to 10, the Chargers' early down passes to running backs was between 24 to 41%. So that means on first and second down, you can guarantee the Chargers at least a quarter of the time are passing it to Austin Eckler in the backfield.
He got it done, to be fair.
No, he didn't. They ranked 24th in EPA per play on those plays, so it was very inefficient.
Austin Eckler had 20 touchdowns, bro.
But those are all really in the goal line. It doesn't mean it was efficient.
So hard to make it negative.
How many touchdowns did Jamal Williams just have?
18.
He had 18. Am I looking at Jamal Williams like, yeah, he was amazing and great? I don't think so.
I understand what you're saying. No, he did have a great season. You can't take that away from him.
I mean, I think it was very dependent on the Lions' offensive line.
That I don't disagree, but we can also talk about how the Chargers' offensive line's not good. And Austin Eckler's still effective.
Well, that's why the Chargers' running game is one of the worst in the league.
I don't disagree there.
17.
Running back targets for those plays were 41% success rate, 4.8 yards per attempt. And this is where the personnel issue to me, it's not a personnel issue to me. This is why I don't believe that because running back targets last season for the Chargers, 4.8 yards per attempt on 84 attempts, 41% success rate. Wide receiver targets at or behind the line of scrimmage, 25% success rate, 2.1 yards per attempt, 12 attempts. All other wide receiver targets beyond the line of scrimmage, 57% success rate, 8.9 yards per attempt on 88 attempts, which means this was more efficient than throwing it to Eckler or behind the line of scrimmage. And on all running back targets, the Chargers ranked 23rd in EPA per attempt, 11th in success rate, so they had some success, and 26th in yards per attempt. The Chargers had success throwing the ball beyond the sticks, but Joe Lombardi just didn't opt to do that. All other wide receiver targets ranked 6th in EPA, number 9 in success rate, number 10 in yards per attempt. This is a mind-blowing stat. Only 42% of Herbert's passes were beyond the line of scrimmage. That means
that's hilarious, actually.
More than half of Herbert's passes were dump offs and screens. I mean, it was ridiculous. So for me, I don't give Lombardi an excuse because on the plays where Herbert is actually throwing beyond the line of scrimmage,
it's getting done.
He had an EPA of 0.37, which would have ranked number 1 in EPA per attempt. Last year, number 1 was 0.31. So Herbert, when he's actually throwing beyond the line of scrimmage, all of his numbers ranked at a top 10 quarterback level, and that's with the diminished personnel. So that's why I'm not somebody that looks at the weapons and like, oh yeah, Herbert has help. He just does not have help. And in the 188 dropbacks that Herbert did have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, 0.17 expected points added per dropback. It would have ranked 3rd over the full season. 50.8% success rate would have ranked 2nd. 7.9 yards per pass attempt would have ranked 3rd. 77.1 completion rate would have led the league. And 106.4 pass rating would have been 2nd in the NFL. So Herbert has shown, I mean, when his 2 top targets are in the field, that we're only on the field together for 22% of snaps, that he is playing legitimately at a top 5 quarterback level.
Easily.
So that's why I don't give Lombardi an excuse, because I think he sabotaged Justin Herbert. And Kellen Moore, I'm optimistic about it because Dak Prescott last year was a very aggressive quarterback. He throws the ball down the field. So I'm excited to see it. I think, given the Chargers' injuries last year, given Joe Lombardi's questionable play calling last year,
man.
the fact they won 10 games is really a testament to what Herbert did.
100%.
And that's why I have a hard time believing they won't at least win 10 games this year.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
If they're healthier, if Kellen Moore even is a little bit better than Lombardi,
Which you will be.
and if Staley can, get this defense at least to be a little bit better against the run, I think there's a positive mindset for the Chargers team. But I do also get sick of every year coming into Charger seasons and being like,
This is the
year.
I don't know.
I feel like this has been this is the year team for 2 years now.
I agree.
Last year and this year?
I think last year and this year, yeah.
Okay.
When they got Brandon Staley.
Yeah, last year I had them high.
No,
Yeah.
last year, understandably so, you should have had them high. On paper, like we do every preseason, it's an understandable mishap.
Had them
You
win the
look at
division
the
last year.
roster and you understand that they were great. They were great. It's a matter of injuries destroyed this team very early on in the season, and it was a matter of Herbert playing hero ball while the defense continued to be lackluster.